Good afternoon, and I want to welcome all of these beautiful people to FDIC 2023. This is another exciting year of education, training, networking, seeing old friends, and the excitement is just bubbling with numbers and numbers of people throughout the Indiana Convention Center. So, welcome to the EMS P.O.D with Chief Randell. By the way, P.O.D stands for Progressive Open Discussions. And so we'll get right into it. So my first guests are Alan Arguello, and he's the Chief Operating Officer for the National Registry, and Mike McAvoy from the National Registry. He's also the Board of Director-elect for the National Registry. And so I want to introduce these two, and then after it, we'll have a second guest. So, Alan, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I appreciate you having us here.
No, I appreciate you being here. If you don't mind, under these discussions, I'd like for our listeners and our watchers to get an idea of kind of where you come from. What's your background?
Absolutely. Well, my name's Alan Arguello. As Chief Randell said, I am the Chief Operating Officer at National Registry. I've been there for about 7 years now. When I first started, I worked as a project manager within the Science and Examinations team, transitioned over into relationship management and operations, and now I work as the Chief Operating Officer. I am a clinician by trade. I've worked as an EMS clinician in the New Orleans metro area for a number of years. Transitioned to working with a large electronic medical record called Epic for some time. And then from there, I found myself at the National Registry, and I've been there ever since, and I've loved every minute. So.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah. Good. Mike? Please.
Yeah, so my name is Mike McAvoy, and I'm the chair-elect of the National Registry of EMTs. Like Alan, I'm a clinician, I'm a nurse, paramedic, an EMS coordinator, a fire chief medical officer, and got my start in New York City while I was in college as a medic, and that was about 45 years ago. A couple years ago, and have worked as a medic during most of that time, and also worked for the last 35 years as a nurse clinician in cardiac surgery in the ICU, taking care of adults and children after heart surgery. And my background with the registry is I've been on the board representing initially the International Association of Fire Chiefs, where I chair their EMS section, and finished that term, which was about 8 years or so, and then ran for the executive committee and became the treasurer for a couple years, and am now the soon to become chairman of the board.
Wow, that is a long road. So congratulations.
Thank you.
For reaching that. So the National Registry, right? It's the nation's EMS certification body, right? And I remember back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the National Registry is making its way through the different states, and places are adopting the National Registry way. And now we're talking at 2023, right? So what are some things that, when it comes to evolving, right? We know that the profession is pushing to evolve, and that the National Registry really has an integral part in that piece. And sometimes when it comes to evolving, we kind of have to get pulled along because that change is really a four-letter word, right? So what's happening at the National Registry?
There's a really brilliant fire chief out in West Virginia who said change wouldn't be so bad if everything just stayed the same, and there's a whole lot of truth to that. From an evolution standpoint, I really want to focus on what the National Registry does, and what the National Registry does best, and that's verification of competency. As a nonprofit certification body, our focus, both at the beginning of a clinician's career and all throughout it, is to make sure that they are competent providers, whether it's through the examinations they take in the beginning or through the continued competency process that they follow. From an evolution standpoint, though, on both of those fronts, we're seeing and we're shepherding changes to the way that we assess that competency. As many people know, we are moving forward the way that we assess our ALS providers. You know, I'm sure you've heard that the ALS psychomotor examination is phasing out because, you know, with improved means by which to assess people and best practices and assessment changing, we have to change as well. And, you know, with the introduction of our new ALS examinations that will measure clinical judgment on our actual computer-based exams, our cognitive examinations, it'll allow a better measure of competency for folks, but also allow us to remove redundancies in assessment that we see in our psychomotor exam right now. And alongside with that, we're also putting a significant bit of effort into redefining what we see as continued competency as a provider. Right now, I think, and historically, we've looked at continued competency as just a means of, you know, attain the right CEUs and you're good. But the question that we're working on answering right now is that all that's there? You know, are there additional means by which to assess that competency? And I'll ask Mike to weigh in on his thoughts.
So on that, I think that whole piece is a change and an evolution that we're seeing throughout the certification community, and particularly in medicine. So physicians have, for years and years, if you follow the physician community, which I do because I work in a hospital, part of my time, is every 10 years to be board certified, they'll have to take their boards over again. And to do that, they'd have to pay $6,000 or $8,000 and go to a week-long review course, which most physicians say taught them very little, but they remembered enough of it to pass the boards the week after. And they've shifted in a lot of professions, emergency medicine and EMS being one, to doing a competency where each year they do some online things where they take a course online and then they take a test based on the things that they learned. And the docs that have been doing that and the way that whole thing has evolved and continues to evolve is causing people to feel like, wow, I really got something out of that. I learned about how practice is changing right now. I learned things that will affect how I care for patients, and it makes a difference to my ability to actually do my job better. And I think that's, you know, evidence-based practice is giving us a lot of things year to year that are new and different. And somehow the person like myself, and I see you have a few gray hairs, Chief.
Yeah.
When you became certified, a lot of things have changed since then. So how do you learn how to do a 12 lead? How do you learn how to put an IO in? How do you learn how to do something that was never taught when you originally took your program?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good point. And I remember prior to some of these gray hairs when I was waiting for that big envelope. And I'm crossing my fingers and toes, and that thing came in through the mail, and I already knew. I didn't have to open it because I knew, right? And now we're talking about continued competency, and the thing that's exciting to me is we're not just looking at EMS in a vacuum, but we're looking at what the professions are doing. And when you do that, then you are part of that big professional family. So I think it's very cool, and we know that when you get your National Registry certification, that you have a certification to try to enter a state, right? And so those states are required to really add to what their baseline knowledge already is, right? And that's the thing I think sometimes people can get confused. Well, it's National Registry, so that's it. No, this is a starting point. This is a jump off, right? So this means you have the baseline knowledge to start, and now you have to be able to function. And I think the role of this continued competency is really going to keep clinicians very honest, partly because you have clinicians that work in rural areas versus working in urban areas. and how do we ensure that these individuals have similar experiences? Because the rural ones may not see an EKG for a while. The ones in the urban areas may see a lot of them. And then vice versa when it comes to care and length of time with care, right? So lots of variables in this thing. And for you all to really tackle that topic, and of course it's bigger than FDIC, right? Like it's a huge topic. It's really a massive undertaking. So yeah, it's good to hear that.
And I hone in on one thing you said earlier, and that's the registry doesn't authorize people to practice. So the registry is a testing and certification organization that does the testing and certification, and then the state authorizes people to practice with a license, in some cases with a certification.
Absolutely.
In other cases. And I think people sometimes think that the registry is really the ones that are empowering people to do that, and we're not. No more than the Heart Association is empowering you with a CPR card or an ACLS card to practice.
Truth, and more truth, right? That's excellent. That's excellent. So, do you have anything coming down the pike? Anything that's exciting? Things you're working on? Any like resolutions or anything that you got in the hopper, so to speak?
Something that I'll continue to harp on is the redesign of our ALS exams. Our intent is, during the summer of next year to introduce these new examinations as the standard for competency assessment for ALS providers. And, with that, candidates, even at present, they're seeing some of the new item types as pilot items. But, beginning in the summer of next year, they will be the standard for assessing competency for ALS practitioners. And, for me, I think that would be, of the biggest things in the hopper, that's what I would be putting most of my focus on right now. And that the importance of that goes to, government regulators, educators, and even, candidates themselves as they're preparing for the examination. I've made the joke multiple times, as it relates to the ALS psychomotor exam. And this is somebody who's taken it, and as somebody who works for the National Registry. But, being able to get, that IV flash out of, that dry rotted mannequin arm, is not necessarily the best way to assess whether or not somebody who's gone through a clinical internship and has successfully started 30 IVs is actually competent. And so just a little sarcasm there.
No.
And you don't see it in any other profession. Like there's no practical skills exam for a nursing license or for a medical license. And I think one of the things that we've learned across the spectrum, not just in EMS, is that people want to be able to determine whether somebody can apply what they learned during a program. And so this whole redesign, starting at the ALS level with paramedic and AEMT, is going to be to develop new items on the exams that measure critical thinking. So different kinds of tests that say, show us that all the skills that you learned you can apply to a scenario, to a patient scenario. And I think that's, I'm an instructor, and I hear from other instructors are like, well, you got to have that skills exam. And the real question is, what if that's not my day to start an IV? But I already did 50 of them in class, and that could be documented. Well, that shouldn't hold me up because that's not my day. Really what we want to know is, can I think critically and look at a scenario and care for a patient in a scenario situation?
Yeah, I liken being a paramedic to shopping. Actually, I'm going to enjoy this even more, to food. I liken it to food. And as an EMT, you have a sit-down plate, right? It's a sit-down meal. You got a meat, you got your starch, you got your veggies, right? And maybe a roll, and of course dessert. Like you got to have dessert. But as a paramedic, you have an absolute buffet, right? You have a buffet from different parts of the world, and you have all these options, and you got to make all these decisions. What do you want to try first? Where are you going next? How much are you going to eat? And when are you going to have dessert? Because it could be first, in the middle, at the end, which is most traditional, right? But being a paramedic has a lot of responsibility. And for the National Registry to take that exam process to a more modern place because of the changing of the times, and to let people know that we are not just technicians, but actual clinicians. You mean there's thinking and math involved? Yes, it really is. And the more that we practice as we supposed to play, the more realistic and the more organic you get those paramedics and the programs. And I'm coming from a background of teaching EMT students, and we could tell these kids that the sky was purple and they would absolutely believe it, right? But as they mature in this business, then they become more critical, and we want that, right? Because if you're taking care of my mom and dad in St. Louis, Missouri, then I want you to be on your toes, all 10 of them, and ready to take care of them as things could go south, right? So it's a big deal, right? It's not just walking around with a patch and saying this is what you are, but this is who you are, and this is how you do it. So.
And it's the future. It'll be at the paramedic and the AEMT level, and then eventually it'll be at the EMT level,
Absolutely.
and it'll be at the EMR level as well. And that's a future piece.
Have you gotten any pushback from this? I know in the utopia that everybody holds hands at these meetings and they go, yeah, we'll do it. This is fantastic. But the reality is, nah, probably not, right? So tell me what some of those things were, and then how were you able to combat some of that and really be able to push forward?
Sure. So just going back to the comment about change, the National Registry and really emergency medical services as a whole has many different stakeholder groups, and those stakeholder groups fall into the candidates themselves, those who are already working clinicians, educators, training officers, medical directors, the state regulators. Anytime there is any sort of a change or proposed change to a standard, whether it's a certification standard, licensing standard, or practice standard, introduction of a new evidence-based guideline that modifies protocols, there's always going to be pushback of some sort because it requires administrative changes usually, and it requires changes to the way that we do things. As an example, from a regulatory standpoint, we recognize that there are many regulators at all different levels of government that have, codified the use of a psychomotor skills examination into different areas of legislation, whether it be a statute, administrative rule. And recognizing the amount of time that it takes to change those things is part of the reason why we introduced even the concept of updating this exam many years ago. This is a drumbeat that we've had for quite some time. We wouldn't, say next week we're going to do this crazy thing. It's not crazy, but that's one type of pushback. And again, it comes from constant dialogue, constantly providing as much information up front as you can. Sometimes you fall short, but you endeavor to the best of your ability. To make sure that you're providing as much resource. Another area where we've anticipated and have received some pushback is from the education community. You have many instructors who are extremely dedicated to their jobs. They love being educators, and they also love having done things, the same way for a very, very long time. And so with that, we've partnered with organizations like NREMT, the National Association of EMS Educators, to do joint webinars for instructors and program directors on what these new item types look like, how they can prepare their students, and but really just the best efforts they can take to support student success. Mike, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Well, and I think the other piece of that is that the registry's learned some very important lessons over the last couple of years, and we're in a process of a complete redesign and overhaul of our website and our IT structure. There's an app now that people can use on their phone to look at their registry card and to do CME, and more importantly, we're using the website as a tool to solicit feedback. So we have something that we're thinking about changing. We wait several months, we put it up on the website, and we solicit comments. And so really, one of the things that the registry has learned over the last couple of years is that when we make a decision, we have to hear the people who are the stakeholders, and we need to be confident that when we do something, make a change like this, that we have heard people and we have listened to what they have to say. And oftentimes that will change the fashion in which we execute something based on feedback.
Okay. How do people, so there are opportunities to stay on the website and stay connected. I remember that I've been part of some of the item writing analysis, some of the practice analysis stuff, right? And
Sure.
how are those opportunities still there? And if so, how do they get connected, right, if they want to do that?
Absolutely. So those opportunities are still there, and I would argue that those opportunities are even more abound now because, with technology having accelerated a good bit thanks to the pandemic. Many of the opportunities to contribute to our assessments and really any of our products that we offer they can be done online. Oftentimes we do host people at our headquarters in Columbus for these things, but volunteer at NREMT.org is the easiest place to go to. There's a place that you can sign up, give some information about yourself as to your credentials and what sort of activities you want to participate in. And from there, that we have I'm going to call it a database of volunteers that we utilize on a regular basis to get people.
Okay.
So on the back of that card I gave you, it says, "Help us write the future together," and gives a website for people who are interested in volunteering for activities. And that's right through our main NREMT.org
Very
website.
cool. So the website is volunteer.nremt.org. That's fantastic. So the pandemic, the word change really hit all caps when that started to hit across the country and things were shut down, right? What was your pivoting strategy around that, just for just some historical sake for folks here?
Absolutely. So from a pivoting standpoint, I can tell you, if we look at what emergency medical services assessments do, and you think about the entire pipeline of when we use the term public protection, which is a shared responsibility across a few different entities. You've got education, certification, licensure, and oftentimes local credentialing, right? Well, you've got education, which has been shuttered. If you have an in-person class, you're not meeting. You needed to go take your examination at a test center. Sorry, the test center's closed.
Right.
So you've got a break in the pipeline. And so Registry's biggest prerogative at the time was focused on maintaining that provider pipeline, because while you've shut it off at one end, on the other side, you had clinicians who could not work because they were quarantined. You had some who were sick. You had some who were dying. And so Registry's biggest strategy was to find a way to administer examinations to keep that pipeline open, and that came through very quickly standing up remote proctoring. I forgot the number of days in which it was done, but it was incredibly rapid.
Very quick.
Yeah, we stood up remote proctoring through our examination delivery vendor very, very quickly, and we worked with another certification organization to push federal stakeholders to put emergency medical services and nursing onto and the certification bodies that certify those professions onto a certain list that removes it from restrictions from pandemic. So essentially it allowed test centers to reopen to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where most of our efforts went toward in the beginning. But those first 21 days of the pandemic were incredibly stressful not even as somebody who works for the National Registry, but really just as a stakeholder of the industry.
Yeah, and remote proctoring allowed people to take their exam at home on their own computer.
Wow.
With a monitor through the testing company that we use. And one of our big problems at the time was something that we didn't really anticipate, and that is that a lot of our test centers are at educational institutions. And so when the educational institution is shut down, as they were, the test center was shut down, and that's what Alan was referring to, where we had to go through the federal government to say, look, this is a priority. These educational testing centers, they have to reopen, and we were successful in that appeal.
I guess sometimes it works to be the nation's EMS certification body, right? Because, I mean, you're affecting an entire system And then if that profession can't progress, and when it's needed the most, then what good are you, right? So that was an amazing step up in order for us to continue to hire, train, and educate future EMTs and paramedics. So
And even despite the pandemic, we continue to certify more and more people at every level each year.
Well, I want you to know that I have been a strong proponent of the National Registry from, we're going to say a few years ago.
A few years.
A few years. And I know that you have a vision as an organization that is a lot bigger than the EMT and the paramedic in the station, right? And we have to understand what that vision is. So your willingness to come on and really kind of give the world an update, right? Like, this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is what we're trying to do. Hopefully that gets folks re-energized and interested. And on a personal level, if there's anything that I can do to help, I would be more than happy to do that, because I love it. I love everything about EMS. I'm definitely an EMS-er, and I love EMS-ing. So if I can help at any level, I will continue to do so.
Well, thank you for your input and your service and your appreciation of EMS. And I think this is a changing era with chiefs like yourself who came through the EMS system and are recognizing the importance of EMS in the fire service, as well as the rest of the country.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so
It's
much.
an absolute pleasure.
Appreciate you having us.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you around.
Yeah.
All right. So want to thank Alan and Mike for being here. And the most important thing about being able to provide good service to the industry is having their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the industry. And that's what the National Registry is all about. So for the testing processes, the importance of being properly educated, all those things are necessary. And there's a level of credibility when you're able to have an organization like the NREMT that's possible. So we thank them for the work that they do, for sure. Now, I have a second guest that I would like to, and this is a bit of a different topic, but I want to introduce something as a conversation starter today here at FDIC. And this guest is a dynamic person. I mean, before you even get to what she does, but Nina Powell is the public education and the PIO for Brownsburg Fire Territory here in the state of Indiana. And we're going to have an opportunity to see where she come from, what is she up to, and what's happening in Brownsburg. So welcome, Ms. Powell.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
That's my pleasure.
Yes, yes.
So tell all the folks that are watching and listening a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I started with the fire service. Funny, I started in 2005. I worked for State Farm Insurance, and I was in the Army National Guard at the time. And I volunteered with Survive Alive.
Whoa.
Yeah, Vincent Randolph, that's at Zionsville, was actually like, hey, you ought to volunteer. We had an event together. And I was like, sure. So I would help, volunteer, teaching kids fire safety. And I was like, wow, you get paid for this? He was at IFD. And so, from there, it's just been history. My children were sort of raised in the fire service also. Since then, I went from volunteer to being hired on, and I am a child passenger safety technician instructor, CPR instructor, fire investigator, deputy fire marshal. My real focus is public education still. Once you do that, you always do it. Education is empowering and delightful, so I love that. And I also serve, like you said, as a PIO, and I love that also. Just getting in front of the community, letting them know that we're here for them, and just really getting the word out. So, yeah. as you're doing here. So thank you for this opportunity and to use your platform.
Oh no, this is fantastic. So
Yeah.
you have I guess we're going to say several hats
Yes,
that you
absolutely.
wear, right? But I think what I would love to concentrate on is your public education piece.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we know that the fire service has done an amazing job
Yes.
at public education.
Yes.
And they're going out almost daily in a lot of
Yes.
instances to educate the citizenry about fire safety.
Yes.
Where do you see that when it comes to EMS? Like, how could that expand, do you think?
I think that's a really good question, and I think that right now we're like at the beginning stages of that. Like you said, we go out all the time, talking about fire safety, injury prevention, and I think even in the injury prevention piece, it really segues into, why we're here, and just making sure that the community is aware and empowered. So. I would like to see, a broader concentration. And I think we've done a good job. In Brownsburg, we partner with, paramedicine and things like that just to bring more resources to the community. And so I definitely see that expanding, but I'm glad that we're in conversation about that, for the community too. So
Yeah, and I remember, I started in the mid '90s,
Yeah.
and EMSing was just they call, we haul.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're just taking folks to the hospital and,
Yeah.
they sick, they just got to go. Well, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. But there was no conversation. There was no education. There was no,
Yes.
this is how we can help solve this problem more long term, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's something that, we should look at. And one of the terms that comes to mind for me
Yeah.
is EMS prevention.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And what EMS prevention probably could do
Yeah.
is remind people that they are empowered with their own healthcare decisions.
Yes, absolutely.
And not rely on 911 or the emergency departments to be their primary care providers, right?
Yes, yes.
So getting that word out to the citizens, I think, could help them feel like they can make those decisions more
Yeah.
appropriately and get in contact with their primary care doctors, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, sometimes people just are so worried. I talked to our medics, a couple of our medics a few days ago, and I just was like, wanted to trend, like see where the pulse is. And so
Yeah.
I was like, hey, what are we seeing? And they're like, around this time of year, people encounter breathing problems, respiratory issues with season changes. And they said the problem is they wait too long to call us. And so sometimes it's a matter of, hey, do you have an inhaler you need? You need to get with your respiratory therapist around this time of year. And most importantly, do not delay. Don't wait till your last breath to dial us. Let us know that something's going on. So I actually have a quote from our EMS chief, Zach Bowers, I want to read, and I really feel like it was like so to the point. But what he said was community paramedicine is an additional layer of resources, empowering the community and their overall wellness. By educating and mitigating in the early stages, our community is getting the help they need before a greater emergency occurs. And so when I hear you say EMS prevention, that's what I hear. Before a greater emergency occurs, how can we empower you and educate you, In fire safety and public education, we have, stop, drop, cover, and roll. And everybody knows what that means, But what does that look like on the EMS side? How can we make programs like that deployable to go out to the community events and say, hey, 1, 2, 3, you know me, or
Yeah,
whatever the
yeah.
case could be,
The
right?
ABCs, right?
Yeah. Something real nice and catchy, but really to the point, life-saving tool. I think that would be, really helpful, to develop things like that. So.
Yeah, we're talking about evolving
Yes.
something that the fire service has done well for a very long time, to the degree that kids, you're in an elementary school, and these kids are rolling around on the floor, they stop, dropping, and they rolling, and they're enjoying it, and it's simple, and they run home, and they tell mom and dad, hey, this is what I did today.
Yeah.
We thought that the firefighters were so cool.
Yeah.
And what's different
Yeah.
than what EMS can do, right? So
Yeah.
deploying progressive,
Yes.
interesting, fun, and very to-the-point programs, I think, is important to fit under that umbrella.
Absolutely. I have I definitely have to brag on the people I know. You know
Absolutely. I'm ready.
that. Theta Donnell with Indianapolis Fire Department and Tracy Graham with Indianapolis Fire Department.
Yes.
They are both CPR instructors. I am also. They hardly ever go to a community event without taking a CPR mannequin and doing hands-only demonstrations. They will allow a child to just hands-on practice. That's it, just to get a feel for what a compression is. You know, nothing certified, nothing like official, right? Just to say, this is how this feels. This is what going through the motions feels like. And I think so many people don't get that experience. And so I'm like, I'm definitely taking that away from them. You know, like, let me borrow that.
Yeah.
Every time I'm out, like, can I get a mannequin? Can I just say, hey, do you want me to show you that? And I think they just do a real good job of that, you know?
Yeah, that's extremely effective for a couple of reasons. One, it says we're providing some education, but two, and most importantly, it allows that individual that's watching it not to be afraid of it.
Yes, for
Like
sure.
it's such, oh my gosh, they dead. Oh,
Yeah.
no, this is what you can do.
Absolutely.
But I was told that you have to kiss them.
I know.
No.
No.
There'll be none of that. If you are not comfortable with doing any of that stuff,
Yeah, exactly.
and sometimes with your loved one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
just
I
go
don't know
ahead
where your
and-
mouth is.
Right.
Hold on. Right? Yeah.
But if you're doing compressions,
Yeah.
that's effective. And
Absolutely.
it brings that anxiety down.
Yes.
It makes them feel more empowered. And they are like,
Yes.
okay, I can participate in this. Because we know when you talk about the links in the chain of survival,
yeah.
that we're on the back end of those links.
Yeah.
And the public is very early
Yes.
and integral in
Yes.
those links. And if we can get them to participate,
Yeah.
then the job on the back end
Yeah.
is going to provide better results. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think one of the statistics that helps me is just the survivability rate. When I talk about that, like, you know, if someone experiences a cardiac episode, they have a 92% chance. Is it still 92% chance of
90,
survival
yeah,
if they
about right,
receive CPR in the early stages? And so it's like, that's not us. That's you at home, you know? But then I also think, too, if we think about, like, you know, just how we were just all at home for a while during the pandemic, I really feel like a lot of people just kind of went unseen in their medical care, not because it wasn't available, but maybe perhaps they were apprehensive. And so I think that now, you know, moving forward, you know, how does that look? Do we have people currently at home deteriorating because of, you know, the fear possibly that they had surrounding, you know, health care or their own personal health, you know?
Right.
And so that's another tidbit, like, how do we penetrate these households who, you know, just have gone a while without that, you know?
Yeah. There are only so many resources, right?
Yeah.
And so all these ideas, you got this whiteboard in your office, and
You know I
have
do.
30, yeah. And you have these ideas that are filling up the whiteboard.
For sure.
And I mean, how do you prioritize those things and get the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak? How do you do that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I know for Brownsburg Fire Territory, we are really big on community risk reduction, whatever that looks like. So fire, EMS, pedestrian safety, every facet. If we run on it, we want to know about it, learn about it. We want to prevent it, educate, and empower. So what we do, as much, and I hear more in the fire service, you know, community risk reduction. But what we've done, we've taken a step back to make sure we do our community risk assessment. So first, assessing the risk, right? So that is data, run reports, trends. How many kids are getting hit crossing the street in 2020 versus now? You know, do we have more people outside or less? You know, we don't have any food deserts necessarily, but are there more pedestrians struck by vehicles in food deserts versus, you know, so just trying to trend, you know, and it's different for every area, right?
Correct.
But just trying to trend where the need is and then prioritize from there. We know that the younger population and the older population are at greater risk nearly of everything, and the population in the middle is busy taking care of both ends, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, mama needs a latte and a helping hand, right? And so we
Yes,
want
she
to be that
does.
helping hand, however we can be, just to empower them with education. And there are some cases where, we may not get to see everyone in our community. Well, then that's where our social media comes in. It is such a teaching tool. I mean, I cannot express how integral like our social media platforms, even now, being with you today, just sparking that conversation. Because a lot of people are at home, they may feel alone or unseen or unsure. If you're under the sound of my voice, make an appointment. Just get the
Right.
checkup, right?
Right,
Just
right.
start the process so that we don't have to take something that could have been a multivitamin and turn it into something that is worse down the line, right? And I think that's
Right.
what this conversation is about anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Nina, what gives you all this excitement? Like, I'm sure when you walk through the door that
Yeah.
the people that you work with go, whew, there she comes, man.
They definitely know when I'm in the building.
Absolutely. So where does that come from? Because I'm sitting next to you, I feel
Yeah.
that energy.
Yes, thank
and,
you.
And tell me, where does it come from for you?
You know what? Passion cannot be taught. I was born like this and raised like this, and so I have this saying: if I believe it in my heart, I can get it done. 9 out of 10, I can get it done for free. There's my chief, and so I had to give a shout out, Chief Paul Hudson, Brownsburg Fire Territory, the best. But if I believe it in my heart, I can definitely get it done, and 9 out of 10, I can get it done for free. All right, grants and everything, but really. As much as I reflect on the comforts of my own life, I think I also consider there's someone else in their life experiencing discomfort. And so how can I spread that or share that? How can I help ease what they're experiencing or bring light to awareness, education? How can I help bridge someone's gap, right? And that's just equity. That's equity. And so just how can I take my life and my cup and pour into others and provide that equity? So yeah, that's what keeps me fired up.
Fired, my goodness, my goodness,
You
and
know
I feel
it.
it, and I feel the heat.
I know. I told you to stop by Starbucks before you got here. You didn't listen.
I did not. That's what you call a lesson learned. That's
There
for
you
sure.
go. It only take once.
Yeah. So when it comes to this, I guess, public education model, you pretty much have an open floor plan, so to speak, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you can really take this thing in a lot of different directions, and Brownsburg appears to be giving you that option, right?
Absolutely.
And so connecting EMS with fire and not EMS versus fire.
Yeah, absolutely
right?
not. No.
So what kind of thoughts, just off the top of your head, do you have when it comes to how can we make some of those things connect where the guys on the fire, I'm a firefighter, and that's
Yeah.
all I do,
Yeah.
and I don't even, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think? What are your thoughts on some of that stuff?
I've been very fortunate. I have served with other departments in the past and noticed that there was a disconnect. But at Brownsburg, everyone is family. And I think that's because of the awareness that the firefighters realize, the EMTs and paramedics realize that we are all one big family with the same mission. And so the love was so organic and just authentic and automatic. I just stepped into it. And it's like, when I tell you, like, every hand is helping the other, it just is. Like, if there was a gap, they bridged it before I got there, And that is really the working system. So many departments, I've noticed, and you have too, we have visions and missions and goals, and we just have silos. We got to put windows in those silos. We got to let each other know what's going on, what are we doing, what's working, what can we do different? What are the neighboring departments doing? What are departments comparable to our size doing? And then scale it from there for us, One thing we definitely do on an annual basis is monitor, the needs and the risks. And not just say, well, this is what the firefighters need to do. No, this is what the department needs to do. Here's the population that we need to reach. And in my conversations, everybody is on the same page. Everybody is aware. And really, that's the only way we can all achieve our common goals in the fire service and EMS service is to do that. We are one big family.
So that terminology of this is what the fire side is doing. This is what
Yeah.
the EMS side is doing.
No.
This is what all sides.
This is
are
what
doing.
we are doing.
Right.
Yeah, there
We
is no
to
side. We
execute.
are a circle, right?
That's right.
Yep.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, this is what we are doing. This is what the Brownsburg Fire Territory is doing. Yep.
So there's some aspiring public education officers out there.
Yes.
And they're listening to this, right? They're
Yes.
getting fired up. Like,
Ah,
man,
I hope
she
so.
is
Yes.
exciting. Man,
Yes.
she must be doing some great things. But
Yeah.
I want to be like her. I want to be the next one.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to go in and have these kind of conversations,
Yeah.
remove the silos of the sides.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you say to someone who has these big ideas and really want to excel and go to that next level, like where you are today?
Oh, yeah. I would definitely say dig deep and dream big. Anything you put your mind to is doable. You just have to have the data behind it. Like I said, passion is something that you can't just teach. You already have to have that. And so if you have it, ride it like a wave. You just stay with it, whatever it is. Sure, I need data. Sure, I need team. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the people, like I said, Theta, my best friends, Tracy. I mean, we just all are in the fire service. We pour into each other, right? And so find your people, find your tribe, the people that want to grow, I am blessed to have amazing leadership that literally, like my chief told me, the fire marshal, Paul Hudson, told me, hey, I just want this to be done. I want it to be done right. Make it how you want it to look. Perfect. I give him data, I give him links, and I get to build from there, so we can't do this solely on a hunch, right? We
Right,
can't say,
right.
I got a feeling this. No, it's not real. Data is real. And so we have to be able to track that, learn it, trend it, and then use it to our benefit.
You have a unique perspective because you come from areas outside of Brownsburg, Indiana, right?
For sure.
And because you're, first of all, you're a black female,
Yeah.
and you come into an environment that doesn't have a lot of black females
Yeah.
in the business, period.
Yeah.
So that kid that's at home and they're looking at you and they're saying, wow,
Yeah.
like she's really doing it.
Yeah.
What do you see that value in being that diverse person within an environment that could really, everybody benefits from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be in this space. Every time I encounter a child, even like at Kroger, at the grocery store somewhere, I always go, hurry up and get this job so I can retire one day, just to let them know I'm waiting on you.
Right.
Because, they say you can't be what you can't see. I never in a million years thought I would be with the fire service, but I knew since day one I would always want to help people. And so this gives me such an opportunity to help people that every day looks different. I never have the same day twice, and I need that variety, right?
Right.
And so whether it be, Afro-Latina children like me, just any children, anybody,
Right.
just to say, hey, because a lot of times minorities just don't know. Like,
Right.
that's a thing, I can do that, or I have to be a firefighter to do that. I'm not a firefighter. I'm a civilian employee. Even though I walk like a duck, talk like a duck, I'm not a duck, but I'm on the team, right? And so
Right.
there's so much that you can do in your lane, in your space, with the right passion and the right leadership. You can really, make this thing look the way you want it to look, So, yeah, I
Wow.
love that. I love that.
Well, good. And
Yeah.
so, in short, you're saying you got to have the passion, right?
Absolutely.
It has to be there because you're going to be in front of people
Oh, yeah.
who, I guess, can't even spell EMS, right? They're
Sometimes.
like, what is this about?
Yeah,
And
what does that mean?
And you have the patience
Yes.
to break those things down. And it doesn't matter that you're able to have the conversation with whomever,
Absolutely.
whenever,
Yeah.
and wherever.
Stay humble, there are times I walk into a room, I have no idea, like, what they're talking about. I'm like, whoa, I'm not even on this level, And so I think about that, we can't get so far in our professionalism that we forget to be people, There was a day I didn't even know this, And so anytime people have questions or they don't understand, it's like, let me just break it down for you. Because somebody broke it down for me,
Absolutely, yeah.
I didn't just get here, automatically, and so, it's that humility piece, I think, is really like, and you can tell that, right? Like in people, like if
The
they're
vibe.
humble or if they're really feeling it. It's like, man, listen, as much as we love this, we got to spread it. We got to spread the word. We got to spread the love and the education, you know, like we need to make this thing full circle. You know, I'm not going to be doing this another 50 years, you know.
Right.
I'm going to be somewhere on the Florida beach minding my business, you know, unplugged. So I need whoever those passionate people are, please follow us at Brownsburg Fire Territory. So that's on our Facebook, our Instagram, Brownsburg Fire Territory. We have a TikTok, Twitter. Follow us because, hey, if you got questions, let's connect. I want to make sure that if anybody has any idea, and, you know, even for our department, we want our department to look like our community, you know? And so we want people to come out, hey, I want to do this. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a medic. Whatever it is, reach out to us, inbox us.
Whew.
I know, right?
It is absolutely amazing.
I can tell you feel fired up already.
I'm very fired up.
I know.
I am. I'm hungry again now too. But that's a whole nother story. But I really appreciate you coming out and really just giving people a taste because there are so many routes to take within this business.
Yes.
And just because it's within a fire department
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you can't EMS in it and excel.
Yes.
So hopefully that's inspirational to some.
Absolutely.
And helpful to others.
Absolutely. I hope so too.
So I really thank you for your time and your passion and the excitement that you share with all that are listening.
Yes, thank you for your time and the platform and all the wonderful work you're doing too.
No, it's all good. So,
Yeah,
so I appreciate
yeah.
it. Well, this really kind of wraps up our episode today. And I look forward to seeing all of you, whether we're out in the halls, networking, eating, cracking jokes, but bottom line, having a great time here at FDIC in 2023. So listen, there'll be more the EMS Pod with Chief Randell online. So watch out for it.
And for more adventures in Nina World, follow us on Brownsburg Fire Territory, guys. Brownsburg Fire Territory on all platforms.
Nina's on the clock.
Always. Always.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot.